Let's talk about Chapter 5, the revenue cycle. This chapter reviews the basics, starting with how the revenue cycle links on page 108 with the patient visit. There's a difference between inpatient and outpatient. You have to document the reason for an appointment. And then there's a table that goes over routine and emergency specialty appointments by specialty. Flipping to page 110, insurance and billing information is reviewed. Services, the physician's office, page 111. Table 5.2, specialties and common procedures that are related to each specialty. Just review that. Page 113, we're talking about different settings. So the hospital and the long-term care is listed there. Assign code or code assignment is important aspect of the revenue. It's very important. This is how you get more for your money or no more for your time. The different codes that are entered in and submitted for billing. And you have to make sure they're right, of course. Flipping over to page 114, the chapter continues to go into procedure diagnostic. I'm flipping the pages here. This is I think a pretty straightforward chapter. Third party payers are mentioned on page 117. We're going to learn a little bit more about these in the coming chapters. Payments received, of course, payments received is important. The daily log comes into it starts talking about daily log on page 118. It comes into play is what I was going to say. Payments from insurance companies are accompanied by remittance advice. That's on page 119. Payments applied, the bottom of page 120. This chapter also has a lot of examples, which is great, especially if you all at this stage of your life have not had to be a healthcare consumer on your own, or I mean, you're very young and healthy. Maybe you've only needed pediatric preventative wellness type things. So maybe you've not yet entered into some of this specialty items. Anyway, I'm getting at is you're young and you're healthy, which is a good thing. I'm trying to not say it in a negative regard, but you just may not know. You may not have never experienced it as a healthcare consumer, going to an office and billing and carrying your own insurance. And there's a lot to it. But again, I think this chapter does a great job reviewing the revenue cycle. Page 121, there's a block that says complete the revenue cycle. Balances and denials, how you handle that, especially denials. You can appeal denials. I think there's a limit on how many times, but you can certainly appeal a denial. Billings and collections is mentioned, or it's on page 122. Examine the RA, run accounts aging. This is important when collecting money and bills that are due. We are actually, this book is a little older, but we are now in a prepay healthcare world. You don't even get seen, even in an emergency room. You have many hospitals, unless it's an emergency, obviously. But catch what I just said right there. If you go to an emergency room and it's not an emergency, you have to pay for your visit prior to being seen. If it is a true emergency, then of course we don't worry about collecting the money if it's really an emergency. And so probably, if I had to guess, I was in the emergency room working last year. I would say 90% of what comes through there is not a real emergency, but there's reasons for that. Then there's uh, understandable reasons for that, and then some reasons we just shake our head. But anyway, it is very important to note the different types of patients. And what I was getting at is we were talking about billing and people owing you money. Now we are in a very much prospective payment in healthcare. Even if you go to a specialist like obstetrician or dermatology and even dental work, now you pay ahead of time. They collect up front. Okay, back to my focus here. Page 125 in Chapter 5, compliance with all regulations. Compliance is a big deal. This chapter only mentions it in a brief paragraph. We're going to learn more about it as we continue in the book. Expenses affect revenue. Of course they do. If you owe rent and payroll and have to buy equipment, then that impacts your bottom dollar, what you make. The summary of Chapter 5 is on page 126, 127. The review exercises, this is actually your quiz that's in Canvas. So there you go. After you review the chapter, please let me know if you have any questions.